us live. Who covers the Bucs for the Athletic and also spent 19 years with the Tampa Bay Times, Greg Auman. Greg, how you doing this morning?
Hey, doing well. Thanks for having me on. Hope you're holding up okay with everything going on in the world right now.
Yes, I'm doing real good. How about you? How's the family and everybody doing down there in Tampa?
Real good, real good. It's not a tough thing for me. I'm used to kind of working from home this time of year, but I got 3 kids taking classes from home. My wife's a teacher, so she's teaching from home. So a little bit crazy, but everybody's holding on pretty well.
Well, that's great to hear that. Greg, let me go right into it. Before we get to the NFL draft, let me ask you, some rumors going around down there about the lifespan of O.J. Howard as a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. What are you hearing about that?
Yeah, it could be. I mean, we've been hearing this for a while. I mean, this was a big story supposedly back at the trade deadline in October. I think if the right offer came, if somebody were willing to overpay for him, he's got 1 year left on his rookie deal and then a 5th-year option. I think that the criticism was that Howard has only had 1 touchdown last year, but played a ton, played more than he had in either of his first 2 years. Just was in more as a blocker. I think it's one of those where if a team is willing to give the Bucs a second rounder or something like that, you could see that. I feel like at the same time, I mean, Tom Brady's got a great history of throwing to his tight end, so it doesn't make a ton of sense to take away from a position that could be much more involved with him as a quarterback.
Yeah, and I actually, that was my exact sentiment as well. And then you hear the other news is that they'll get rid of O.J. Howard, and possibly there's been speculation of Rob Gronkowski coming out of retirement and coming down to Tampa Bay.
Yeah, it's another fun one. I think people, want to bring the whole band back together here and have Edelman down here and Gronkowski down here. I mean, he retired with the Patriots, so they still have his rights, so they'd have to negotiate some kind of trade. Gronkowski's 30 now and has been out of the sport for a year and was injured for part of the last 3 years. He was playing healthy, or playing in the league at least. So, again, it's something that I'm sure is a conversation. I don't know if that's actually going to happen, if he's actually committed to coming back and playing football full time. But those two things would certainly, work in better lockstep together if they both happen. I still don't know if that makes it happen.
Okay, now the Bucs, obviously, they definitely need to still a left tackle. We talk about the running game. Do you think with the going around that Leonard Fournette's available, do you think the Bucs are comfortable with Ronald Jones enough, or do you think they could possibly make a pitch after Leonard Fournette?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're definitely going to take a running back, probably here in the draft here in the next week or so. I don't know that Fournette is a match. It's one of those where, he's basically a short-term rental. I mean, you get him for 1 year at about $4 million, and then his price goes up to about $8.5 million after that. So it would be it'd be tricky. He caught a lot of passes last year, and that's something they're definitely looking for. I don't know if he caught them well. So I guess I'll be curious to see what the Jaguars are seeking for him in a trade. If all they're seeking to get for him is like a third-day pick, it's not a bad trade for a team that, wants help at running back and feels like they're close to winning. But I know the Bucs like the depth of running back in this draft and could very well use a third-round pick and get someone who can help them for 4 years instead of 1.
Now, Thursday night's the draft, and I know busy week for you, obviously. The Bucs got the 14th pick in the draft, unless something happens where they want to trade up, but as of now, they got the 14th pick. In your opinion, knowing this team better than anyone, what should they do with that first pick?
Yeah, I would be surprised if it's not an offensive tackle, unless the top, 4 tackles are off the board, which is possible. And they definitely have a hole at right tackle right now. Bar Dodson had been there for a long time. He wasn't re-signed. They've signed a guy named Joe Haig, who kind of step in until a rookie is ready, but I think there's every expectation that they'll use a first or a second-round pick on a tackle. If the top 4 tackles are gone, then you could see him maybe take a D lineman like Jalen Kinlaw. That's where it gets more interesting. But as long as one of those top 4 is there, it makes a lot of sense to stay put at 14 and take a tackle there.
We're talking to Greg Auman. Auman from The Athletic. The Bucs have 7 picks. Besides the 14th pick, they have 6 other picks after that in the NFL draft. Do you think those 6 picks are going to be used on the defensive side of the ball?
No, probably more of an offense is built on this draft. Their first 5 picks last year were all on defense. So I would think a tackle, a back, and a receiver are definitely part of those 7. I think there could be a second offensive lineman. I would be surprised if at least 4 of the 7 aren't on offense this year.
You know, and I'm hearing a lot about that, and I want to ask you why, because you know the situation better than anyone. They keep talking about another receiver. You heard the rumor, like you mentioned, about Edelman. They got 2 of the best receivers, probably the best duo of receivers in the NFL, in Evans and Godwin. I mean, do you really need another top receiver down there in Tampa Bay?
Yeah, I mean, they played with the 3 receivers set 64% of the time last year. Their number 3 receiver, Rashad Perriman, got $6 million to go to the Jets. So, I mean, they definitely want to try and replace him. They've got a couple in-house options that, lower round picks from recent years that could step up. But no, I think they'll take advantage. I mean, this is a really deep class of receivers, so I think they could even wait till the 3rd or 4th round and get somebody who's a potential upgrade at number 3 receiver. It doesn't have to be a number 1 pick. I mean, I think if all the top offensive linemen and defensive linemen were gone, you could make a case for them trying to take a receiver there if one of these top guys like Jerry Jeudy or Henry Ruggs is still there. But, I mean, again, they have 2 receivers right now, but, I mean, Chris Godwin's an unrestricted free agent a year from now, probably due to make at least $15 million a year. They're already paying Mike Evans $16 million a year, so there's not many NFL teams that are paying 2 receivers that much. So I think they have to at least allow for the possibility that Godwin might get to a point where it's too expensive for them to keep him.
We're talking to Greg Auman from The Athletic. Greg, before we let you go, because we know you're real busy, the Bucs have gotten Tom Brady, obviously. That was the biggest offseason news in the NFL. My question is, how deep can the Buccaneers go in 2020? And could they legitimately be the first team ever to host a Super Bowl in their home stadium?
Yeah, I mean, that's still a ways off, but I mean, I think the expectation now with Brady here is that this is a playoff team, and one that some people at least think could challenge New Orleans for the NFC South title. I think what's going to be the measure of this team and its successes is what they can do in the playoffs. I mean, Bucs haven't been in the playoffs at all since 2007, so it's strange to think about evaluating a team's success by what it does in January, but that's probably where they're going to be. I think the expectation for Brady is certainly different than the expectation for the Bucs, at least in their histories. But if they can, get into the playoffs with Brady as their quarterback, I think that certainly makes it possible to make a deep playoff run. Really hard to know who they'd be facing, where they'd be facing them, all those kind of things. But I think for Brady, if you can get in the playoffs and at least win a playoff game, this will be seen as a disappointment for him. I think he's known for getting in the playoffs and doing things once he's in there. So I think that'll be the same even in a different uniform this fall.
And our last question for you before we let you go, Greg. If you had to say there's one missing piece, the missing piece that gets the Bucs over the hump this year, obviously you already got Tom Brady. So with Tom Brady there, if the Bucs can do this or get this, you feel comfortable with them being over the hump this year?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the biggest thing, we talked about tackle already, but I think they could definitely use a consistent running game. So, I mean, if they can get somebody at the same level or better than Ronald Jones, where you have a really good 1-2 punch that can both catch the ball out of the backfield, that's what they really need to take some of the pressure off Brady. Make sure he doesn't feel like he has to do too much all by himself. So I think you'll see by the end of the draft, one way or the other, they address running back and get some help there.
Well, Greg, I want to thank you so much. I know you're busy this week with the draft coming up. I want to thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule to join us.
Hey, no problem. Thanks very much. You stay safe.
You too. That was Greg Auman, the great writer for The Athletic, who covers the Bucs, and he also works